being here today. Welcome to Avenigio.
It's my pleasure, and I really thank your audience for joining. Welcome from around the globe. I am in New Jersey, and I know Elizabeth is in the UK, and Pooja is in India. And if you would want to, you can put in the chat where you are from. Reading aloud is really a global topic, so I do appreciate that you are here with us today. I want you to think a moment about all that Pooja said, the beauty of a story that you hear. When you hear a story, you do not have to process all that's involved in reading. So I just want to take a moment to walk you through the steps before I go into some fun things about reading aloud. I want to take a moment to walk you through the steps about what happened when you are the reader. So when you are the reader, you are looking at a page, you are looking at symbols associated with a language. And when you're very young, those symbols are like pieces of art. They're drawings on a page. Then you learn that those symbols are associated with a sound. So you have two things in your mind, the symbol, and then you add it like a math equation to the sound. And then when you read, you have to match that symbol to the sound, and you have to produce that out of your mouth. There's a lot of work that goes into reading. And then to have reading make sense, you have that symbol plus that sound. So you have the visual and the auditory. It's coming out of your mouth when you're the reader. And then at the same time, you're supposed to remember what you're reading and have it make sense. So when you are the reader, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot that you are doing. You are looking, you are viewing, you are listening. All your brain, all those connections are happening. And simultaneously, you're speaking that out of your mouth for an audience. And you're trying to capture what you said so that you're comprehending it as you're reading it. There's a lot there that you are doing, many, many steps. And it doesn't matter what language is your native language, you are doing all of that simultaneously when you are the reader. When someone reads to you in a read aloud, you get to sit back and relax. You might be in a chair, on a couch, on the floor, with earbuds, or as now you're listening to my voice. But you then do not have to do so many things simultaneously. You get to sit back, you get to take it through your ear. Some of you may even be closing your eyes unless you're taking notes, which is fine. But you then get to sit back and absorb it like a sponge. So just like I closed my eyes for a minute, your mind's eye can be open to absorbing the sounds, imagining, making a picture in your mind. And that's the beauty of the read aloud. The beauty of the read aloud is there's less work that you, the listener, have to do in order for it to make sense. So then you can enjoy the story more. And this is all the way up from birth through college. As I said to Pooja, there becomes a point when we are in school where we say, oh, and I'm just going to randomly choose a name. So, oh, Veronica can read by herself. Go ahead, Veronica, go read over there with Elizabeth. The two of you read. And then the teacher may take another reading group. And there's a sense of pride of, oh, I can read by myself. I don't need the help. However, that is where I think for teachers and for the adults, the parents, grandparents, caregivers, we are making the mistake, because then that student, although they get a sense of pride of, I'm a reader now, the teacher trusts me to read. Let me read to you. We take away some of that enjoyment when we no longer read aloud to them. And I distinctly remember, like Pooja said, I can remember that transition happening around 3rd grade, where the teacher did fewer and fewer read alouds, and there was more and more silent reading, more and more read to yourself. And I have to say, I missed it. I like to hear the teacher's voice reading aloud. I often say the only students that like when I sing in a book would be the kindergarten 1st grade. I will not sing for you, but there's a joy that comes. Think of the joy that comes if you go to a live performance, a Broadway show, if you're, whatever your theater is, if you see a movie, you're at a concert, you get to immerse yourself in that. Now think about a concert for a moment. Those are songs that are written on paper. If you have a musician, a performer you like, and then you go back and look only at the lyrics, like a page of text, like I have here, and you look at those lyrics, you'll be singing along. You will be hearing that person singing in your mind's eye. Same thing with a read aloud. And that is the joy of it. And that is what, when Pooja and I were talking, I really want all the way from birth all the way to college to make sure that you are taking time to read aloud with your students. Their comprehension, when someone reads aloud, the comprehension of the student is higher than when they have to be the reader. Because when you have to be the reader, if you're self-conscious about reading, then you get worried about making a mistake. So some of you or your students, you get a little anxiety. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Do I know all the words? Is someone going to trip me up? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? So all of that is part of what happens when you ask a student to read aloud, or when you just say, go read by yourself, go read by yourself. So I encourage, and I have done this, I have taught kindergarten all the way through college. There is always a point in the courses that I teach where we do read alouds, and we do them for fun. And I want to share with you some examples of the books that I have read aloud for fun. And I do them with different props. So I know some people think, oh, I'm not an actor, I'm not an actress, I'm not comfortable with it. But it's fun, and it helps you remember and get into the mode. And it also helps your students. So for example, I have this book here called Make Way for Ducklings. Okay, this is a very classic book in the United States, Make Way for Ducklings. It happens to take place in Boston. So some of what happens when I read this book is I also afterwards will show the students. Now we have virtual field trips, show them in this story when they talk about this park. You can go online and see the pictures of that real park. So that's the fun as the adult of really knowing a story. So here's Make Way for Ducklings. When I read this story, I have the story and I have a hat that I'll wear so that the students will know I am becoming like this character. And it is fun for me. I have gotten over years ago of feeling like, oh, it's silly. Oh, they're too young. I have done this book, which is really probably 3rd, 4th, 5th graders. I've done this like after lunch with middle school kids. Hey, you know what? You had a really, you were out there. Let's calm down a little. Instead of saying, calm down, be quiet, sit in your seat. As they come in, I just grab a story and say, come on in, let's relax, let's regroup. And then teachers, I have to say, I'm not sure what your classes are like, but then sometimes when they're outside for lunch, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, they talked to me, they didn't talk to me, who talked to me, and I'm like, let's just sit and have a story. Come in, calm down, take a little break. And I also sometimes for this story, I happen to have little felt little ducks that are just little cute things. And I have these and things that I save over the years, and it's in a little baggie. And when I read the book, I just grab it and it's together. So these are the kinds of things that you can do when you do a read aloud. And the students enjoy the story. It's a sense of calm. And, you know, when they look at these pictures, it's very different than watching a video game. These are classic pictures, and it's big enough that they can become part of the story. Now, the other thing I want to say when you do a read aloud is your voice plays a lot into how the read aloud feels to your students. So in other words, when I'm reading a story, I can say, when they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. And you change your voice when you read, the students will feel that. Also, realize when you're reading aloud, you are modeling how the language sounds. You are helping those students with vocabulary and the cadence of the language you want them to learn. So I could read the same page like this. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. That just sounds like a robot. That would actually, I have to say, be very hard for me to do. I would not be able to maintain that through the book. So the way I read it is, when they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Now, if you know anything about ducks, a mallard really is a kind of duck. So when you're doing this book, if you chose to do this book, either before or after, you could talk to them about kinds of ducks. So this story can then become a science lesson. Because this story takes place in Boston and there really is the public garden, you can then have a geography lesson. So I'm also a big advocate of when you read a story, use it and use it again. And you will know if the students really get into the book, they will ask you to borrow it. They will say, can I borrow your book? Can I borrow it from the school library? Can I borrow it from your public library? And that's how you know you have a hit. They want you to do it again and again. Now, I also will let parents know, not every day, but I will let parents know once a week, oh, I read this book in class. The students enjoyed it. Maybe you would like to consider reading it at home. And then you've made a connection between the family and the school. And it's cost you not 1 pence, not one amount of money of anything. And that's the beauty of it. You've invested in the story, you've used your voice, you've modeled what a read aloud is, and then you have all the students there, or most of them enjoying it, and you know your students. So you know what kind of story they will gravitate to. The other thing I want to tell you about reading aloud is there are some students who really get nervous reading to you as the adult because they often feel like there's a grade involved. However, if you give the students, and I have some puppets here, if you give the students a puppet to read to and just say, oh, take a puppet, take a stuffed animal, read to the puppet, and you listen, you will have some students who will read to a puppet who won't read aloud to you. Because they feel when you're reading when they're reading aloud to an adult, they are more nervous. Maybe not so much if it's their parent, but definitely if it's their teacher. Are you grading me? Am I saying it correctly? Are they going to stop me? So they get more worried about it. It becomes more of a high stakes performance. But if you have a room, and at home, same thing. If you have an area where there can be some puppets, I have a few different kinds here. So, and you have puppets that they can read to, stuffed animals, stuffed dogs that they can read to, dolls that they can read to. You will often hear the students sounding like you. They will model you. And that's like the best compliment. I have had that happen where I will walk around and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trying to be me reading aloud. But that is them practicing language, and it is so much fun. And then you know they are enjoying it. And as Pooja said, when you enjoy the words, you are already soaring with your literacy. Now, I happen to teach adults and children who are English language learners. So they speak another language, and they already are trying to learn a second language. And I say to them, you already know one language. Now we're going to take what you know about a language and use that to help you learn English. I do not ask them to forget their first language. It's taking the strength of that first language and using that to help you learn a second language. And as Elizabeth said, her daughter does reading to her teddies and her dolls, and she is going. She is a blossoming reader. And adults, think of yourself as you drive. We do the same thing when we put our favorite music on the car radio or on your whatever you're listening to. If you're walking and you have music, we're bopping around. It helps us. So think of it that way, of having those props. They are bringing the stories to life. Now, one of the stories that the students like when I read and the adults like when I read is Green Eggs and Ham. So in the United States, we have a day called Read Across America Day. It is March 2nd, and it's a celebration of reading. And students, sometimes dress in costumes from their different story characters. Teachers will dress in different costumes. It's a day to celebrate the fun of reading, not a day to be tested about reading, not a day to worry how good of a reader you are. It's a day to say, I want to enjoy stories. Now, I have to give you a word of caution. If, like me, you invite people into your classrooms to read aloud with your students, please, 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 please ask them to practice the story first. The adults will tell you, I know how to read. Just give me the book when I walk in. I have had this happen. And here is the reason why they need to practice. Some books, as you read them aloud, get a certain rhythm to them, especially with poetry. And if you're reading aloud and you don't capture that rhythm, the students feel it. It just doesn't feel like you are comfortable as the reader. And that is what happens when I do Green Eggs and Ham. So just by using your reactions in the Zoom, if you know this story, either do a thumbs up, or if you want to put your camera on and show me a thumbs up if you know this story, or you want to use your reaction, you can show me. So this, and thank you. So this is a story that is part of a whole collection of books by Dr. Seuss. I will not read the whole part of it, but I want you to hopefully have fun just hearing my voice read so that you understand that I practice what I'm encouraging you to do. And then I will show you a backpack that we use in a school that I taught at to encourage reading from birth all the way through adulthood. All right, so this is the story, Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. I am Sam. I am Sam. Sam, I am. That Sam I am, that Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. Now, if you look here, the reason I emphasized it is because of the ending punctuation. So remember, when you are the reader, use that punctuation. Do you like green eggs and ham? Again, at the end, in English, when we have a question mark, we raise our voices a little bit. So I do the same thing. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam, I am. I do not like green eggs and ham. Would you like them here or there? Now, if you notice in this story, the vocabulary is not at super, super high level, and they repeat the words, but they are repeating the words in a different sequence. It goes from a statement to a question. And then you take your voice and you have the exclamation and the question or the period. So you get to play with that, and your students will too. And that is the beauty of it. So I am going to skip a few pages because here I'll go to the middle. Would you, could you, in a car? Eat them, here they are. I would not, could not, in a car. You may like them, you will see. You may like them in a tree. So the basis of this story are rhyming sounds in English. And as you go through, there are more and more words that rhyme. And then you can do rhyming sounds with your students, the words in this book. And then you ask them, oh, what else do we know that rhymes? The next time you read, can you find any rhyming words? And then you have their vocabulary and their language skills develop from what you did as a read aloud. Okay, I'll do one more, a few more pages here. Not on a car, not in a tree, not on a train. Sam, let me be. I would not, could not in a box. I could not, would not with a fox. I will not eat them with a mouse. I will not eat them in a house. I will not eat them here or there. I will not eat them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam, I am. And that is why the flow of this story, you really have to have it, because otherwise you don't get the quickness of how it goes. And here is the last page where the students are like, oh my gosh, how did you do that so fast? So I will do this page. I could not, would not on a boat. I will not with a goat. I will not eat them in the rain. I will not eat them on a train. Not in the dark, not in a tree, not in a car. You let me be. I do not like them in a box. I do not like them with a fox. I will not eat them in a house. I do not like them with a mouse. I do not like them here or there. I do not like them anywhere. And you build up to that whole crescendo. And then the students are like, it's like at the end, they're taking that breath with you. And you have got them enjoying the story. Now, many teachers who do this, and here's the face of Sam, because he does try green eggs and ham. And I won't give away the ending because some of you have not done this story, but I want to let you know that you can take this same book and then talk about different foods. What foods do you like? Why don't you like it? Have you ever tried the food? So there is so much from a read aloud that you can then take the lesson. That is why I say, beyond reading the story and closing the cover, there is so much you can do with the book. And that is the beauty. And I will say to you, all of you here, if you email me, I will put my email in the chat. If you want a little pep talk, like, I want to try this book, I'm nervous, can you help me? Please email me. I know where we are, we might have a time difference. So make sure you email me, not when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in my class, I have a lesson in 5 minutes, can you help? But if you email me and want me to talk through with you, I will absolutely be there to help you. This is a joy for me, doing read alouds. Now, that being said, I have also written books. So I will share with you books that I have written and the fun of writing. So being a reader sometimes connects to being a writer. So this is the first book that I wrote. I actually wrote this based on my son, who right now is sleeping downstairs. At the age of 24, he came to visit. So he was the kind of kid who did so much on his own, but every night he wanted me to read him a story. So this was part of a competition. They were looking for teachers to write stories for kids. I did not do the illustrations. I sent them the text. They created it. And I learned so much about writing and reading. So this is one book that I wrote, and I want to share these with you just so you know that I have practiced what I'm asking you to do. Because sometimes you go to these presentations or a presentation and you're like, that person just talks. They've never really done it in the classroom. I have authentically done what I am speaking with you about. And then in a few moments, I will take your questions. So that is one book. Another book that I did was 100th Day of School Activities. So in the United States, 100th Day of School is a big celebration. The teachers start counting day 1, day 2. It's like getting to 100 is ta-da! Even though we have many more days after that, when you get to the day 100, you're like you're halfway done, more than halfway done. So in this book are 100 activities that you can do for the 100th day of school. And it's science, it's math, it's poetry, movement activities. So the reason I wrote this book is because when 100th day of school started, teachers that I worked with would say, let's take a white shirt and put 100th day of school. And that was what they did. And I was like, no, there's so much more. Let's do more. I'm always trying to do more. So it was, how can we do, can we walk 100 steps? Can we read 100 books? Can we, collect 100 cans of soup and donate them? Can 100 pennies float? So many different things that you can do. So one of the things I hope that might come out of today is that you now have ideas of like, oh my gosh, I'm inspired. There's so many things now I want to do with my students, or there's so much more that now I understand about bringing reading to life. And that is one of the things that I did when I co-wrote this book with 2 friends of mine, is we took stories that happen in real locations so that after you read the book, you can go and take a tour of that place. So for example, there is Make Way for Ducklings in here. There are many, many books. There's a book called Blueberries for Sal. There's Mary Poppins. You can go and do a tour of London if you read Mary Poppins out loud. There's a book called Train Songs. So some of these activities, they do have interactive component to them. Thank you for that question. We also included in the back. So this was geared, we have in the a US map, and a map. So as you read stories that happen in different locations, you can put a little dot, or if you enlarge this, a little pin, and travel the world through reading. And then you're like, oh, you know what? Hey, we have not read a story that takes place in that country. Can we do that? And I want to say also that think of stories that you may have enjoyed reading. And as Pooja said, when you were a child, and that will be fun to revisit with your students. Read them out loud. And then in the United States, testing. How well do our students perform? How well do our students perform is a big thing that happens in our schools. My own children were very into theater, and they still are very into theater. And I have a friend who teaches what we call gifted and talented students. The students that have a talent, and we call them gifted and talented, that you expect them to excel. Now, here's what happens. Those students, maybe gifted in music, gifted in art, gifted in performing. They may not be the same students who score the highest on the tests because you're testing them in a way that is not their gift. So what we did, and we focused on the fine and performing arts, is we have a book called See It, Be It, Write It. And taking the students who like to do theater, who like to do music, and starting with improvisation. So you give them Once Upon a Time. It was a rainy night and the crackling of thunder was heard throughout the town. And you get the students up and say, you're the student making the crackling thunder. You're the student making the sound of rain. Or you say, be the rain, and you get them moving. So you take them from the big, where they are the action, to what we call the desktop theater. It is a shoebox that we put straws and a little curtain in with a picture in the back, and it became our theater. So you go from the big, let them move about, to the desktop theater. I'm not endorsing the brand of shoe. I'm just showing you, literally, it's a box with straws, a piece of paper that we folded and made a curtain. And in the back is a picture or the beginning of a story. And then you have them write that way. And then they will become better writers because they feel the story. They know what you want them to do. So you've reversed what we often do as teachers, at least teachers that when I was growing up. Let's read the story and then we'll watch the movie. Let's read the story and then we'll act it out. Do the acting out part if you're practicing having your students do better for tests. This is not a joy for me, doing better for a test. However, the process of doing it through enjoying acting, enjoying performing, and then bringing it down to your desktop, and then doing the writing, you have the students engaged more, and they understand better what you expect of them. Now, the last thing I'll show you, I feel like I have like a big, I do have a lot of things here. The last thing I want to show you is encouraging families to read from birth. So this is a backpack. In this backpack at the school, anytime a student, there's a birth, so a student's family, they have another child, or one of the teachers, one of the administrators, their family increases either through birth or adoption, we would give them a backpack. And in this backpack, we would put books that they can read aloud to that child from the very beginning. And the fun part is the student who is in our school gets to take the backpack home. So how would we find out? The students often tell us, oh, I have a new brother, I have a new sister. So you don't always have to ask, you don't have to pry. They often will tell you, guess what? Mommy had a baby. Guess what? We adopted a baby. Guess what? Our family got bigger. And there are different things that they will express to you. Now, we would confirm that, yes, it did happen. And inside the backpack, we have books. And we say to the child in our school, you are a reader. You practice reading this with your new brother or sister. You practice reading this with the new baby. And then all we ask of the family is that at some point, send us a photo of the baby being read to. And we would put them up on the wall in the school, like Pooja has a wall behind her. And the kids in the school get so excited. Oh, look, so look, there's a new baby, there's a new book. I love that book. And it starts them talking. And it's a happy thing to look at. It's a happy thing to look at. We also gave them all different kinds of books. And we made, let me just grab it out of here. We also gave them, this was the name of our school. We also gave them a folder so that they felt that they were getting a little gift, the sibling. And inside we put like a little puppet. So it's about being, comfortable reading and having something that is theirs. And one of our teachers was very creative, and she made an activity book to go with it. So it was part of our character education program, much like Pooja talks about social emotional learning, how to feel comfortable. So in that backpack, books, a folder, an activity book. So then you have the family together, and it could be grandma, it could be grandpa, aunt, uncle. It becomes a community of readers, and it starts from birth. And that is how we will also make an impact on literacy, starting from a very young age, and not saying to this, oh, you don't need me to read to you anymore. Read with your child, enjoy it through adulthood, and read aloud. Read aloud. When I teach a class of teachers, adults who are becoming teachers, there is always a component. I say, bring in a book you like to read. We're going to practice reading aloud. Now, I will stop there for now. I know I have. I know I gave you a lot. Any questions? Pooja will be the moderator for that for sure. Any questions?
Yes, that was amazing, Hope. Many times I was going back to my school days and coming back into the present, because when you were talking about impact of reading, I could remember this one story where whole class cried. There is one, my mother tongue is Kannada, and there is one story in Kannada, Punya Koti. Punya Koti is a name of cow, and she with her all friends, they went up to hill to eat grass. And what happens? There is one tiger by name Arbhuta. He comes there and he was hunting for food, and he finds this Punya Koti, and he was he was almost ready to kill her, and she notices him, Punya Koti, and she begs him for a time. She says that I have my kid, my calf in my house, and I go back and I want to feed her milk. She would be hungry and waiting for me. I'll definitely come back. And this Abhuta tiger, somehow he trusts her, and he gives her permission to go. Punya Koti goes back, and she feeds her child, and she speaks to child and kid and says that, I have promised Arbhuta that I'll go back to him and I'll never come back. And she asks her friends to take care of her kid, and she comes back to the tiger. And tiger was shocked, because tiger was not expecting her to come back, because he was thinking that, she's escaping from the death, why would she come back? But she comes back as she promised, and she says that now you can kill me, I have fed my kid. Now at this moment, tiger feels so sorry, and he feels bad for his behavior, and he praises her for her honesty, and he jumps off from the hill, and he dies. At that moment, a while ago we cried for Punya Koti, and a while after we cried for this tiger who died falling from hill. And that was the impact. Even at this moment, I could clearly remember the names of the characters, and I remember all the situations, because that is how it was read in the classroom, and that is how it was communicated. So that is one example. When you were, there are many such stories, but this has always impacted me. And, that is what I think made me more committed towards anything I do. Because I always feel, if we trust, if we keep up our words, and definitely, good things happen to us. And I have seen that happening, and it always gave me, I think these kind of stories only made us what we are today. The other, you have, I think somewhere we are living in parallel world, because there is another world which is completely opposite to it, but we are still hoping, and we are still hoping for better world because of these kind of stories, these kind of teachers, and these kind of impacts, I guess.
And that is very true. The stories, as Pooja is saying, the stories can give us a sense of hope, a sense of things can get better, a sense of things are not so bad, a sense of, wow, I can make a difference. So yes, very good. Thank you.
Sharma would like to share a story.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead. It's your hi.
I would like to share a story. It's Bear and two friends. Once two friends were walking through the forest. They knew that anything dangerous can happen to them at any time in the forest. So they promised each other that they would remain united in any case of danger. Suddenly, they saw a large bear approaching them. One of the friends at once climbed a nearby tree, but the other one did not know how to climb. So, being led by his common sense, he lay down on the ground, breathless, pretending to be a dead man. The bear came near the man lying on the ground. It smelled in his ears and slowly left the place. Because the bears do not touch the dead creatures. Now the friend on the tree came down and asked his friend on the ground, "Friend, what did the bear tell you in your ears?" The friend replied, "The bear advised, like, one second. The bear came near the man lying on the ground. It smelled in his ears and slowly left the place because the bears do not touch the dead creatures." Now the friend on the tree came down and asked his friend on the ground, "Friend, what did the bear tell you in your ears?" The other friend replied, "The bear advised me not to be a false friend." So every story contains a moral. True friend is the one who always supports and stands by you in any situation. I hope you heard it before. Thank you.
That was nice. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's a beautiful story about friendship. So sometimes when we want to have conversations with our students, we want to use a story to help open the conversation rather than saying, how do you feel about good friends? What is a good friend? We use a story, and that's a perfect example. We use a story to help us open a conversation. So excellent example. I also want to share with you, if some people are trying to figure out, well, how do if you are worried about your children or adults, this specifically is geared towards children. If you are working with children and you are trying to have them practice English, so this is specifically if you are working with children and trying to have them practice English, there is an app. It is not fully 100% ready to go, virtual. There is an app that I am working on developing, and it is called Read M. If you are interested in testing that app as a teacher, as a parent with some of your students, we would be more than happy to hear from you. And it is an app where we are practicing with short stories, having students hear the words, having students read the words, having students hear them self-read. So we are developing it so that they can have the little short story read aloud to them, and that also they can record themselves and hear themselves reading the story. The other level of it is that the teachers will be able to write stories and have like a teacher library of books, and then your students will be able to write their own books and then share them out with parents. So I know sometimes I have parents who will say, my English isn't good enough. My English, I don't have enough literacy to read with my children. And I say, yes, you do. Reading is reading whatever the language is. So I want to also encourage you to read with your child in whatever language it is that is your first language. And then also, if you're having them learn a second language, read in that second language. But when I say read aloud, I am not saying it has to be in English. I am saying that is how they will enjoy language. That is the joy of language. Now, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Ashika asked, what is the right age group I should keep in mind when making a props for my stories?
So I make props. I have to tell you, I do props with my students all the way up through middle school and high school. Here is the difference. There is a time when I do not make the prop, and I will ask the students to start making props. So for example, I have a high school teacher. She's excellent, excellent teacher. And she does Macbeth. And she will tell the students, okay, in this story, we need a cauldron. Someone make a cauldron. In this story, we need some hats. Let's make hats. So then the students are becoming part of what you will be doing with the story, and it gets them to pay more attention. It gets them to pay more attention because there's my cauldron, there's my prop, there's my hat, so you are already getting them engaged. Also, for you, those of you who are like, I don't have the time to make things, you can also buy things. Like I will often, I do a story about baseball. Here's like my little baseball bat and a ball. It's not like they're not really going outside yet to play baseball because I'm doing this inside the classroom. So I'm not breaking any windows, but I do have a little bat and a little ball so that they see what I'm doing in the story. That being said, when I do the story about baseball, I do talk to the phys ed teacher, the gym teacher, and I say, Mr. Al, I am doing this story with the students. It has to do with baseball. So when you have my class, talk to them about the story. And here's what happens. The kids will say to Mr. Al, oh my gosh, I didn't know you knew my teacher. We're doing a baseball story in class. And then they come back to me and they're like, Dr. Blecher, oh my God, Mr. Al knows we're doing a story about baseball, because the kids don't think the teachers talk to each other. It is so funny when the kids realize that we connect, but it also then helps them have more background knowledge. Then they're like, oh my gosh, I could talk to these two teachers, and they don't realize it. And I see the smiley face. It is so true. They just think you're my teacher for this, you're my teacher for that, and when we can help them realize that we are a team of teachers, they also gain more confidence. And from my experience, like the art teacher, the custodian, I will take the students. We did a story about different foods, and I asked the principal, the head of the schools, can I take my students within the school and go down to the lunchroom? And we met the people who prepare the food, and got like a behind the scenes tour of what happens when they're making the breakfasts or lunches for the students. The people who work in the food service told me that afterwards, they noticed that the students treated them more respectfully, because now those adults were a different kind of friend to them, a different connection. They were never disrespectful to them, but they treated them more as like a connection, like more as like their friend. And that's another thing that can come out of the stories. Any questions, comments? And like I said, sometimes I know when I'm in a webinar or a Zoom, afterwards, I think of, oh my gosh, I wanted to ask this, I want to share this. You have my email, hope@hopeforeducation.com. That is also like, I will hold up the little logo. This is the website. Pooja saw it. Hope, and it's the number for education.com. You can learn more about me, but you can also email me from there. And let me know. So I will show you the books again. So this, they're asking where you can get the different books. So some of the books that I wrote are available on Amazon. Some of them are available as a PDF. You can, they're out of print, but I can send you a PDF. So please email me and I will help you. This is not something where I'm here with Pooja that you have to buy the book. That is, if you want to, take it as a compliment. Thank you, thank you. Also, to encourage you to have a dialogue with people in your family, with your colleagues and peers, saying, let's do a read aloud.
Thank you.
And if anyone here teaches, older kids, go for it at an older age. Yes, Pooja, thank you.
No, I was just, thanking you for sharing all the resources because, there are many of them and all of them are teachers here. So they may need your help or they may get some resources from the elements that you have shared. And obviously I am available on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with me. We are hosting every weekend this kind of events. It started with working towards or working on teachers' mental health. And I just, what I have understood is there is a lack of training and in many schools and educational institutions and a lack of support, lack of understanding of teachers' need. Hence, I thought, okay, from my end, what I could provide or accommodate, so that I have to start doing, and that's how these events started. And I think with this we have completed 18th or 19th weekend with different topics. I'm inviting educators, and even after this, these sessions are available on YouTube channel, and that links also you can go through. We have conducted sessions on many different topics, and every weekend I'll be back with different topic. You can join me in. Thank you so much, Hope. Thanks a lot. This was wonderful session, and I thoroughly enjoyed and learned a lot. Reading aloud, and I know it is helpful even for the parents, those who are homeschooling or helping their children with learning, and teachers, of course. Thanks a lot for everyone who have joined us today. I think I could, definitely I can thank